Hello and welcome to another episode of 177 Nations of Tasmania podcast. In this episode, I'm talking with Jean-Marie, who originates from Mauritius. Now, Mauritius is a small island nation situated in the middle of the Indian Ocean, about 2,000 kilometres east off the coast of Africa. Because of its history and location, it is a real blend of cultures, religions and languages, though with the French culture leaving probably the biggest mark. Most people live on the densely populated island of Mauritius, but there is also a smaller and idyllic island called Rodrigues, where Jean-Marie spent a good part of his childhood. There are also a few connections with Tasmania, Mauritius being the setting off point for the explorer Abel Tasman. And like Tasman, Jean-Marie has spent most of his life in the maritime industry, and that work brought him to Shearwater near Devonport several years ago. So, to find out more about Jean-Marie's story and what brought him here, please listen on.
My name is Jean-Marie Sauzier, and I'm in Shearwater, Tassie, and I love it here. I've been in Australia for the last about 35 years, I think, now. And I've moved around. I came to Melbourne, like many Mauritians before. Landed in Melbourne, there's a family there, and then moved to Sydney, and then to Canberra, and then eventually, Tassie. Love it here. I work for the federal government in the maritime industry. So we look after, the big ships industry and small boats also. So through my work, that's what I moved a bit. I used to be in headquarters in Canberra. And then, as a position came up, I come down here. So anything to do with maritime, big ships, safety stuff, I'm a bit involved in that.
Tell me about where you grew up and where you came from. Where was it? And what kind of place was it?
Okay, and I've got to, I can't actually go past Rodrigues also because, I grew up in Mauritius and I spent 3 years or 4 years of my childhood in Rodrigues, which is a dependency of Mauritius. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually very, very close to Rodrigues in the sense that because I feel that was the best years of my childhood life. Mm-hmm. Every time I get a chance, I go back there. And you see, I've got lots of pictures, everything that reminds me. Every time I go to Mauritius, I want to go there. So I grew up in Mauritius and, started work in Mauritius. I think I was about 17 or 18, I started going to sea. And then, there was that, push for lots of people to migrate from Mauritius to Australia.
Okay.
And I'm part of that. And it was all right, like every family, you got the good and the bad, it was great place, Mauritius was known as a tourist destination. At that time, the main thing was the sugar industry. Mm-hmm. Tourism started to come in there at that time. Flying was not something that, was as easy as we do today. But it was good, I can't really complain too much. Things have changed, obviously, 35 years later. And Mauritius itself is independent since 1968. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing about that is that since 1810, which means 158 years, it's been ruled by the British. However, the French influence is actually much stronger. So, it's quite rare.
French is one of the official languages.
French is my mother tongue,
yep.
And it is one of the main languages, and Creole is actually another language. Obviously, English is, taught there and we speak there, and all exams are in English because mm-hmm. we still follow, at that time I said, was a Cambridge certificate.
Yep.
Okay. And I was saying that the French influence was really great. And in Mauritius, talked about cricket, no one would know what cricket. Now, yes, they know about insect, but not the game. Yep. And that despite, the bombs being there for 150 years.
So there's still a lot of French culture influence.
There's a lot. And now you're getting, because Mauritius is multicultural, you got people from Asia, from Europe, from Africa, all over. There's a melting pot, of those cultures there. And, you get more and more the influence of, from Southeast Asia, and Chinese, Indian, Muslim, countries. There's lots of that nowadays. So that the French thing is starting to sort of, dilute a bit, if you want, but it's still there. And then, like I said before, we got that little island, is absolutely beautiful. I call that paradise on earth. Rodrigues, spent 4 years, I think, of my life. Absolutely beautiful place. That's a place that I'd recommend anybody if you want, peace and absolutely a retreat, nothing, and the people are so great. Yeah. I can't praise that place enough.
So what made it special for you? What are the memories that you have about it?
Well, when we were there, we were kids, and there was no crime, no theft, nothing. Everybody just roamed around, and we were kids, and parents would just leave us, and we fend for ourselves, and it was just an innocent world. Obviously there was no television, there was no electricity at that time. Lots of things which we take for granted. But the friendship, the people, the warmth of the people, the passion for the land, for the farm, for the animals, for the sea. It's hard to explain. It's hard to explain. In fact, I took my son there for the first time in 2019, and I took him to a place where we lived, and he looked at me and said, "Dad, this place would have really, shocked you." And it did. That was the first time I saw that place after, 20 or 30 years, and the first time I was allowed to go inside. I've seen the house, every time, you go there. But yeah, and then the second time we went, and he said, "No, Dad, we need to go back again. I need to see that place again." So yeah, it is a very special place. It is small. It is small, and I think there's about 50,000 people there, 35,000, I think. It's quite mountainous, but people are so warm, so friendly, that's what makes it different. I'm not saying people in Mauritius are not different or not friendly, but in Mauritius you've got so many of them.
Yeah.
You've got 1.3 million people in Mauritius, and everybody is, there everywhere. So, and they're nice and friendly. Yes, you got, the odd ones, but it's a different culture. It's a very different culture. And yet they belong to the same sort of, brothers and sisters.
But I guess that can happen in islands because they're a bit cut off from each other, that a separate culture can develop.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so on. And from what I was reading about Mauritius is certainly in the last decades, all these new industries have developed.
It's really, really boomed, the last 20 or 25 years, if you want. There's lots of construction. People used to have, backyards with mango trees, lychee trees, and all of those things. And nowadays you don't have those anymore. It's just building and building. It's developed, and before it used to rely on sugarcane. Now that's gone completely or nearly.
Right.
Tourism is a big thing, and obviously that's been, that had the major impact during the pandemic. And I myself used to go there 2-3 times a year, and I've not been there for 2 years. It's a long time for me. Lots of changes, lots of roads, cars, things have changed so much. Whether it's for the better or for the worse, we always use the term good old days.
Yeah.
We always use that term. But I think there are some good changes.
Yeah.
There are some which is not really great also. I was fortunate on all fronts in education. My dad was a teacher to start with, so primary school was partly in Rodrigues. And then when we had to complete primary level, so we were sent back to Mauritius, and my parents stayed there for a year or more. We completed that, my brother and myself, and then we went to a quite, I wouldn't say elite, but, a very good Catholic school, which is sort of, well sought after. So you had the competition, you had to pass exams, and and meet the requirements, and then get there. And I think that was 6 years at that college, secondary school. It's actually made me what I am today, because I got lots of discipline there. I got lots of moral values there. And then afterwards, when I went to see that discipline, was there. And that's what made me what I am today, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, So education was good, you had good teachers, we were quite like I said, fortunate. And the thing is, thing that I tell people is that we used to be taught, for example, maths. And most of the time the teacher will explain that in French. And then, the exam is in English.
Okay.
Yes. To sort of make it easy for us, they'll explain that in French, and then afterwards write it in English on the board. You take notes, you learn, you do it, you do your maths calculation in English. The exams is in English because we follow the SC from Cambridge.
Was that a disadvantage to have done it in French?
It is a bit of a disadvantage because we write English, and we do lots of that, English literature and then those subjects. But when it comes to speaking, it's very different.
Okay.
It's very different. I remember coming here to Australia, and you've got that process we all go through. So you speak to me in English, so I'm translating what you're saying in French. Think about an answer in French, translate it in English, and then try to say something. And that's what it is. But in terms of writing, I think, we quite good, in spelling and all of that, because that's part of a curriculum. I knew quite early what I wanted to do. I must have been about 12 or 13.
Okay.
And I sort of thought, because first of all, I'd travel on board ships between the islands. And then I had an uncle who was in the Navy. And I always thought, that's not a bad way to sort of, do something that I enjoy, what I think I enjoy, And I always thought, going to sea sounds great. But it is quite restricted, there's not many ships, employment is not easy. But I tried and I pushed myself through that. And I remember doing, what they call a trial, about the 5-day sea passage, coming back. And I was sick like a dog. And I'm thinking, all my mates are going to work into offices, in banks and all those places. Why, you crazy or something? So I sat home and I thought about it and I said, no, I want that. And that's what I did. Yeah, so it to an extent it was sort of easy that way because was not sort of, swayed one way or another to do. Yes, my parents didn't really want that to happen.
Okay.
Because they always say, why you want to go away? What is this? A sailor's life is, you go away for months and nowadays people go away for 3-4 months. I mean, my time we go away for 12 months, and that was the norm.
Yeah, and you didn't have the possibility of all the means of communication.
No, nothing like that. You'd send a letter in one port and, you get to another port, a third or fifth port, and then you get a reply, and you think, it's already 3 months gone. Yeah, it was very different from what it is today. And nowadays, everybody's got a computer in their cabin and, their phone, WhatsApp and everything. So we didn't have any of that stuff.
And so what was the path from after school to get into that kind of career?
In Mauritius, there were 2 shipping companies, okay? And one had a few ships and the other one had just one vessel. And I, tried the first one, but, it's a closed shop. It's not easy to get in, And I tried to get in, and the other one, I saw somebody one day. I said, I just want to sail. I want to go to sea, one thing. So I got an interview with, someone who's a master mariner and a superintendent. And I remember, I'm 17 or something, really shy, there's a captain sitting there and he said, what do you want to do? And what's what I want? And at the end of the interview, he asked me, he said, you got any question? I said, yes, I do. And I said, sir, you've got one ship only. Mm-hmm. So what happens if you sell that vessel? What happens to the crew? And he looked at me and he said, with lots of expletive, and he said, I've not even employed you, and you're thinking like this. And I said, well, the reason I'm asking that is because I want to make that my career. I don't want to be, going there and then a week later you say, we don't have any ships anymore, you go back, and I got the job, So since then, we've met a few times afterwards. Sadly, he's passed away now. We've met a few times after, and I always thought, remember this? Yeah. So I sailed for his company for a long time.
So how old were you when you sort of went to sea? 17
or 18 very young and green. Yeah. You believe anything that they tell you, and boy, oh boy, did Yeah, but again, these were the days where, you'd be bullied, if you want to use that word, but you didn't see that as being bullied. Mm-hmm. You saw that as part of a job, as part of, the growing up, part of, toughing up.
Yep.
And that's what it was.
And so was that the first time you'd left Mauritius?
Yes, to go overseas, yep. And the first trip was to Reunion Island and then to South Africa. And I was lucky because as soon as we got to Reunion Island, there was another ship and my uncle is there. Mm-hmm. So I caught up with him and I said, this is, wow, blah, blah, blah. So, and then afterwards, then it takes a while to get used to the fact that, I'm missing my friends, I'm missing, the afternoon chat with, family and all of that stuff. But then you get used to it. Afterwards, you get used to it. I mean, I've left home on the 24th of December, 25th of December. I've left port on the 31st of December. You get used to it. I spent a few months on there was a couple of vessels which used to do Mauritius Reunion every time. And then during the peak season, which is August and December, back and forth. It's a bit like the spots. Spirit of Tasmania, back and forth. And yes, there is another ship, which goes to Rodrigues, I think every 2-3 weeks. And in my days when we were kids, you had that one vessel which came once a month.
Wow.
Once a month. And you could see that. And when that happened, that was something on the island, that was an event. And then from where we lived, we could see the ship. It was called the Mauritius. Come there, drop anchor, and then you see all those small boats. You go there, unload cargo, you name it, animal, poultry, pigs, bags of stuff, no containers in those days. And yes, and mail was delivered in a strange way, but, so we get the mail from Mauritius, come to the port in Port Maturin, and someone actually at the post office is going to shout everybody's name.
All right.
Yes, so you walk, you leave, maybe 15 or 20 k's from Port Maturin, you walk down there, and you hear, that's your name, Mark Thompson, yep, okay, there's one for you. And you got to wait because there might be another letter for you in an hour's time.
Oh, really?
Yep. That's what made a difference in, when I see the life, what it was there.
Yeah.
And in Mauritius and here, you got the postman, you go to the post office, you go to the mailbox. And over there, it's very, very different.
Yeah.
And then you get cyclones. So the ship is delayed, she can't come, but that's the only time you can get, they normally bring fresh, vegetables at those days, stuff that you didn't have on the island. And yeah. The first time we saw, small bottles of Coke, that was when the vessel would come and Dad would have a crate, with 24 of those, and you don't drink it every day. It's not, nowadays you open your fridge, you can have a choice of Coke and, anything else, but no, it was not we didn't even have a fridge. There was no such thing like a fridge.
Yeah, right. So did people grow a lot of their own food?
They do. They do grow a lot of stuff, but, it's a very arid place, okay. You don't have too much water. They used to grow onions and corn, sweet potato, those things. And they've got farms with pigs and cattle and poultry. Mauritius is different because you do get more bigger variety, gets a bit more water, so you've got huge, a fair amount of stuff. But even that, Mauritius had a cyclone about 10 days ago now. And, basically that affects everything, all, the plantations. So sometimes they got to import, fresh fruits or vegetables from, maybe India, maybe South Africa,
right.
Maybe Reunion or Madagascar or something, yeah.
What led to you coming to Australia?
Well, funny, I knew you were going to ask me that question of, the why. I don't know the why. Mm-hmm. I don't have an answer for that. Okay. I can tell you the how.
Yep.
But the why is quite different because, I went to sea, so I was sort of cut off of what was happening at home. Yes, we were coming, home every now and then, spend 3 nights at home, or, mom and dad, my brother was already studying in Europe, or in Reunion and went in Europe. And I know that we've got relatives here, obviously, because Mauritians have got relatives everywhere.
Yeah.
So I know I've got an auntie here, she lives in Melbourne, and she kept coming back to Mauritius because she felt on her own yet a bit lonely. And every time she came, what'd be good for you guys to come to Australia, we love thing and everything. And those days, I think family reunion visa was really easy to get. And I think at some point in time, I might have gone to an interview at the consulate. Might have gone, I can't remember that. Mm-hmm. But I remember clearly how I was told that we're going to Australia. In fact, we were in Reunion Island and I was on a ship there and my brother came to visit. And then I was sort of walking back, with him to the bus stop where he's going to catch his bus to go to university, his campus. And he said, so when are you going to Australia? And I said, no, we're not going to Australia. We're going to Durban, South Africa. And he says, no, Australia. I said, no, I'm telling you, this is the next destination for the ship, is to South Africa. He said, oh, Mum didn't tell you anything. I said, no. He said, no, we're all going to Australia.
Right.
This is how I learned about it. I'm thinking, this is crazy. I just spent, 3 days in Mauritius and Mum and Dad didn't say anything about it. What is this? So, and those days, no communication, nothing at all. Yeah. Couldn't write a letter or something. Came back to Mauritius about 5 weeks later. And Mum, I forgot to tell you about this. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. So that's how, we ended up. And then I thought, all right, okay, let's give it a go. And we obviously came to Melbourne. I didn't like it at all.
No?
No. Too cold, I think we came in March.
Okay.
March, and then, Melbourne, March can be freezing also. For someone coming from Mauritius, in March in Melbourne, it could be freezing. So that was, how we ended up here in Australia, and no regrets whatsoever. Absolutely, it was not easy, but like everybody else, it's not always easy to sort of leave your friends, leave everybody there, leave everything that you had. And, I sort of had a break from my shipping company. Okay. I wasn't too sure what was going to happen. And here I felt a bit of pressure from my parents, some relatives. Oh, why don't you do? There's lots of opportunities here. And then afterwards I thought, no, this is what I want to do. This is what I thrive in. And I did pursue that thing, and I'm glad I did.
And what were some of the things that were maybe more challenging to adapt to when coming to Australia?
I think I would say one is language. Mm-hmm. Okay, and because we don't speak English in Mauritius, it's quite rare. We write, we read, but speaking is different. And I think the climate is something which is quite a big. Going to Melbourne, where you think, oh, gee, it's really cold, it's too hot. At some point in time, everyone, just wait, summer's just, coming now, and then you get to 40, 42 degrees and thinking, hang on, this is just too much, this is not on.
Yeah.
I think these are the two things that I would say. But once you sort of get used to it, it's like everything else, I guess. I was in Sydney. I started in the first year, 1988, to do my first exam. So I did that, got my second mates, went back to sea, and every time I came back, I went back to Sydney. So since then, it's been Sydney every time. So when I got married in Sydney, bought properties there, my parents live there, now my brother lives there. Sydney is now, the place, home.
And so when did you move down to Tasmania?
7 years ago.
7 years ago.
7 years ago. And that was because my work, I kept moving. I moved from Sydney, where I've been working for a while, and I went into Canberra. Mm-hmm. I think 5 years or 6 years in Canberra. And then there was an opening down here. That's when I came here.
And had you been to Tasmania before?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. My work sort of, involved lots of traveling. Mm-hmm. So I know a fair amount of places in Australia. I've been lucky that way also. Seen lots of places for work, but you don't really have time to enjoy those places, but at least you've seen them, you know what it is. So yeah.
What have been some of the differences in living here compared to other places you've been in Australia?
I like the peacefulness, quiet. Where I am, I could spend all day. I don't even have one car. In summer I have birds. This is really that thing. It took a little while to get used to it, not long, but once I got used to it, it was absolutely bliss. So that's one difference. Obviously the traffic, obviously the quick pace. Here it's a small community. Everybody knows everybody. Even if you don't know them, you feel at home. It's a bit different in Sydney. It's a big city. I like to go there because that's where my family is here, over there. But would I go back and live in Sydney? I'm not too sure.
And do you find the people here different as well, being in a smaller community?
Yes, it is different here. Like you said, it's more community people. And I guess, last year was the first time I went to King Island, and I can see now, what it is like to be in a very small community. Everybody knows everybody, and it's about the same here. And you can go anywhere. People are quite friendly, helpful. It's great. It is really, really good. You're not a number.
Yeah.
Anywhere you go, you're not a number. Yeah.
And in Mauritius or on some of the islands, is it a little bit like that, where everyone knows each other as well?
It used to be like that a long time ago when I was a kid. That used to be like that. Nowadays, it's quite different. Okay. However, there are some people, depending on where you hang out, there were still some of those communities sort of thing. But it's not like there. No, you wouldn't say that. People know, but they know that, you're from Australia or you're from this. That's all they know. Not much.
Mauritius is a melting pot of different cultures and people of different backgrounds. Does people from different backgrounds, is it a harmonious environment, or is there sort of a demarcation between particular communities?
But I think there's two prongs to that. Nowadays, with the younger generation, that's changing. More and more people are seeing them as Mauritian.
Yeah.
Okay. In the past, quite often people will associate yourself to your religion.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So they would say, you're a Tamil, or you're an Hindu, before saying that you're Mauritian. And it used to be sort of, you can only marry, within your own community.
Okay.
It was really odd before. Yes, what's happened in the 70s and 80s, but nowadays it's quite common, which basically makes that melting pot even, a bigger, mixture of cultures. But on the other hand, there's still, let's call it what we can call the political divide. That those people are, we tend to sort of, go one way, and this one's another, community, this is another community. So that's it. But generally speaking, they all live, really well together. There's lots of respect.
Well, I'm looking here at some example of Mauritian cuisine.
Yeah, well, it's called gâteau piment. Okay, it's I say it's not a delicacy, but Mauritians like it. When we go there with other things that we eat, there's something else called dal puri. You might have heard about it. Everybody says, "Oh, you go there, come on, can you have some dal puris, for me," and all of that stuff. So I made some for you, just for you to taste. I hope it's not too spicy. I have tasted the Sri Lankan version of that, which is spicier. But this is the sort of thing that we grew up on. Yeah.
And what's it made of?
It's actually chickpeas, dried chickpeas.
Oh, okay.
And then blended, and, you got to add some spices and some chilies, obviously, because everything's got to have chilies.
Yeah, okay.
Well, mostly, and you eat it like that as a snack, and yeah.
And so I'm just curious about what people typically eat in Mauritius.
So you would have, again, because they got that culture, you've got maybe the staple food is rice. You know, for some people it might be bread. And then, you know, you've got, if you got that, you know, subcontinent culture, you know, you will have a bit like an Indian meal, you know, something like a curry, vegetables, you know, and the sort of things that you're likely to see, you know, maybe in some Indian, you know, takeaways. Otherwise, you might have, you know, the bread, which is a bit more of a French side of things, you know, and chicken and, you know, a bit of us, you know, cooked in a French way. And then obviously you got the Chinese, you got the fried rice, you know, the normal, you know, sweet and sour and, you know, braised beef. So you get that. However, you know, on a daily thing, you know, Mauritian will improvise. We'll have rice with, you know, a bit of lentils, you know, with meat. There's a mixture of everything. And one of the things that also, you know, they also have is pickle. Lots of pickle, you know. Same type Indian pickle, Indian spicier. But Mauritian, you know, there's lots of, you know, vegetable pickle, mango pickle, and, you know, and all those stuff.
You mentioned your son. How many kids do you have, actually?
I've got one.
One, yep.
He's 23, I think. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's into music.
Yeah.
Plays the guitar, so like, you know, every teenager, you know, just a different, very different bubble. Nice kid. No, I've got nothing to say about that. But in terms of communication, I think he could improve, but that's just me.
I think a lot of parents
I think every parent would say that. But a nice boy. Yeah, can't say much.
And is he, does he have a lot of interest in his sort of Mauritian roots?
Well, he didn't. You know, I mean, every time I kept inviting him, Andre, I'm going there. Oh, no, Dad, I've got this, I've got that, everything. And eventually, I remember just coming back from Mauritius, October 2019 or 2018, I think. And then I was here about, you know, 3 days later. So, oh, Dad, I'd like to go. And I'm thinking, I just came back, Andre. No, I'm free in January. I mean, this is a school kid. Yeah, I'm free in January. So we went back. So it took him there for 10 days or something. And now he likes it. Oh, you know, now, you know, he's got the Mauritian beer lined up. He's got the Dalpuri lined up. He's got the Aluda there. He's got this. He's got, you name it. Oh, yeah. He likes food. So no worries at all. No worries at all. You know, anytime, yep, Andre, yep, Dad, we'll get this, we'll get that, we'll eat this, we'll eat that. So, yeah.
Is it important, do you think, to kind of pass on a little bit of that to your son?
I don't know, to be honest with you, because, I mean, he doesn't speak French. He understands the language. He doesn't say a word, except when you're playing cards. So now he knows. But otherwise, is it important? I guess to an extent. He's been there. You know, I've kept telling him, you know, you've got a place now. You take your friends there, go and stay there. You know, use the place that we've got there. Yeah. But, you know, I think there's a bit of laziness. But if that dies out, I mean, what can I do? Not much.